Well, good morning. Looks like I'm live. Happy day to you all. I believe it's Wednesday. I would have to double check. My day's already off to a bang. So I was thinking this morning, I had a situation arise and I just didn't react in the best version of myself. You know what I mean? Like, you ever have things come up that you go, well, I really thought that I had grown in how I would respond to these type of things. And so, little backstory on this. Last weekend, we've got a rental, and one of my amazing family members rents it, and she's awesome and great tenant, great family member, great friend. She calls me last week and says that there was a snake that had gotten into her house, and I was like, oh my word. And of course we live 20, 25 minutes from that rental. And if we're being honest, I'm not going to go take care of a snake. So there's another solution. I have a husband and 4 sons. I am last in line for going to take care of this snake situation, right? So fortunately, my daughter-in-law and her mother, who are just these amazing ladies, they were actually next door at the neighboring house, and so I don't know what you would call her, my son's mother-in-law. I mean, we've got to be related somehow, because we're, both pretty influential in these kids' lives, but they don't give us a title for each other. But so my son's mother-in-law, my daughter-in-law's mother, she's total BA. I mean, she went over and took care of the snake. and then the snake bit her. I was like, oh my word, this is all. So I call her, hey, are you okay? You're a total rock star. I would have not done that. And then I was like, if you need to go to the doctor, I don't know, do you get a tetanus shot? What do you do when a gardener snake bites you? Who knows? So she was like, no, I'm good, so she was great. So that all went down last weekend. And we're going, how did this snake get in the house? And we're like, well, there's a tiny gap. And, I don't know. We've never had a snake in this house. And it's in town. It's not like we're in the country. And so we're like, well, there's a little weather stripping. Maybe that's the place. And so this morning I get a phone call bright and early, getting ready for the day. Got lots of meetings and appointments. So does my husband. We're both getting ready to run out the door. And my family member calls me, borderline, kind of on the verge of tears, and says, there is another snake in the house laying in the exact same place. And I'm like, what? You have got to be kidding. Well, of course your mind instantly goes to, is there a den of snakes that have come, and burrowed, and how are they getting into the house? What is going on here? And she's like, they're in the same place. And I just grabbed my dog and I ran, and I'm out in the yard. And of course I'm, 20, 25 minutes away. Still not completely ready to run out the door anyways. So here's the part where I go, my reaction to this whole situation was not the best version of myself. And so I had seen, one of my sons was heading that direction, and I knew he was going to be passing by there. So I called and said, hey, can you divert and go take care of this? I know you're on your way to work, but maybe call and let them know you're going to be a little late because you got to go get this snake out. And he's like, how do I get the snake out? I'm like, I don't know. How am I supposed to know that? And then he's like, well, I've got to be to work and this and that. And I'm going, blah, 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 blah. So I got kind of mad at him, and I hung up on him. Super rude. That was not the best version of myself. So then I turn on my husband, and I'm like, why is this my problem to deal with? You should have to deal with this. It's a snake. It doesn't fall under my jurisdiction, And he's like, I have to be at a meeting at 8. And I'm like, well, so what? Blah, blah. Why does it always fall on me? And, just not responding in the version of myself that I want to be. And really being reactive, driven by emotion, letting the situation dictate who I am instead of responding in a way that's measured and respectful and considerate of others around me, and solution driven rather than emotionally driven. It was not great. And then I even called my other son and woke him up, said, hey, can you just go take care of this? Which he was like, yep, I can do that. He too is 20 so minutes away. My husband's like, call a critter person or something. I'm like, there's no critter person at 7 a.m. And, so anyways, I just didn't respond great. And I didn't treat the people I love in the way that I think you you should treat people you love, even in a stressful situation. And afterwards, I did end up calling a critter person, and then my family member ended up, while the critter person was getting ready to go there, saw a neighbor's light go on, and so she went and got the neighbor to come and get the snake out of her house. So anyways, and then I talked to the critter person, blah, blah, blah. So at the end of all that, I started really evaluating, like, boy, I did not respond super well to that situation. And I think it's easy, like, when we have those moments where we realize, like, that was not the best version of me, and that was not the version that wasn't loving of the people around me. It wasn't solution driven. Like, I don't want to be that person. And I don't want to behave that way, but I also don't want to be that way. Do you see the difference? Like, there's a difference between I want to behave differently and I just want to be a different version that responds naturally differently. And I know that takes effort. And so how do we do that? How do we transition? And here's what I came up with. So in that moment, as I replayed, of course, the first thing I did was apologize to everybody and just go, I apologize. Like, my reaction to that was unfair. And you're always super helpful, and it wasn't fair of me to treat you poorly because I was in a situation that was stressful. Stress is the response to emotions. It is not the emotion. And so when I started realizing that stress and angst or anxiety are responses to emotions, they're not emotions in themselves, they're reactions. And that we can learn how to react differently and have a different response come out of us. That's really empowering. So what comes from that is, of course, I apologize, but then where we go with that is we can begin to, I look at that and I go, man, that was not the best version of me. I did not handle that whole situation well. And so right from that point, the key is never to go to shame. Like, oh, I hate that that's who I am. Why did I do that? I just went, okay, that's not who I want to be. And so from there, what we have to do is look back on the situation. So I went back and assessed and went, where did I go wrong? So I started going, it was wrong of me to be reactionary, to call in a heightened fire, to not look for measured solutions, to not consider other people. So we look at all that and I go, okay, that was all clearly where I went wrong in this situation. But we can't stop there because that doesn't bring transformation. That just shows us where we don't want to be. Right? Does that make sense? Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be this anymore. And so so what I did from there is went, what would have the better version of that situation or of me looked like in there? What would a successful outcome have looked like? So I had to replay that in my mind. And I think that's really key. And I think that can be the part we don't do. We stop in that place of condemnation, or we begin to justify it. Like, well, of course I was reacted that way and I was stressed out. It was a stressful situation and it was urgent and it needed tended. And so I think either of those can be really detrimental. If we go to this shame place of, oh, I'm terrible and awful because I reacted poorly, or, well, of course I reacted poorly. And we begin to act like that is a normal, healthy response to stress, is to act in ways that are unkind, inconsiderate, and poor. Does that make sense? So both of those I don't want to do, I don't want to be. And the only way not to do that is to go back and go, what would have been, in my thinking, the ideal beneficial way to respond to this situation? How could I have come up with a solution, collaborated with the people around me, given honor to those who oftentimes step in and help me with situations, but yet not put on them something that was unfair and burden. And so that was just kind of like my experience, and I wanted to share that tool because I think sometimes we get caught in those moments, and what we do is we go to shame or we go to justification, instead of where the transformation comes is if we can go back and replay what would have been a good solution, what would have been a good reaction, what would the best version of myself have looked like in that, how could I have contacted that person, what could I have said that would have been different, what could I have done to make change? Does that make sense? And so I just wanted to share that tip because it's a big part of getting from the place of being problem driven or always looking at what went wrong. Like, we do have to do that, but at some point we need to shift our focus and our thinking to what would have been the better solution, what we would like to see, the vision we desire, who we want to become, and begin to focus on